Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can everyone see my screen okay? Yeah? Okay. So my name is Yuki. I'm really excited to talk to you today about our Rikuzentakata project, where we'll be exploring sustainability in rural Japan. I work with an organization called VIA, and we run this program in partnership with a university in Tokyo, Japan called Rikyo University. And I'll tell you a little bit more about both of our organizations in just a bit, but I just want to say welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. All right, let's get started. Okay, so this is our agenda for today. So we'll start out with introductions. We'll introduce our facilitators, and we also want to know who's in the audience with us. We'll also tell you a little bit about VIA and Rikyo University, the facilitators of this program. We also want to share some background about Rikuzentakata, the place that we'll be visiting, and the March 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami disaster. We recognize that this was a long time ago, and so you might not be super familiar, so we just wanted to give you some background information. And then we'll give you some details about the Rikuzentakata project, so a quick program overview. And then we have an alum joining us today. Jonah is in the audience, so he'll share his perspective of joining the virtual version of the program. We'll share the schedule for the program, as well as some program logistics, including application and enrollment timeline, program costs, and any kind of COVID contingencies. And we'll leave time at the end for questions. So for right now, you can leave yourself on mute. If you have any questions or concerns that come up, you can just go ahead and type them in the chat. My colleague Melissa is going to keep an eye on the chat for us. So if you have any issues, technical issues that come up, she'll be able to help us out. Let's see. All right, and the call is being recorded, as you probably saw at the beginning, and so we'll share out a recording afterwards. Okay, I think that was everything. So a little word about our program facilitators. There are going to be two main facilitators who are on the ground in Japan. I'm one of them. My name's Yuki. I'm a program director with VIA. I've been with the organization for about 5 years. This is actually my first time that I'll be able to join the Rikuzentakata project in person, knock on wood. So last year, I facilitated the Rikuzentakata project as a virtual program. It was amazing. It was really interesting to meet all of these people in Rikuzentakata, but I am very, very hopeful to go there and meet them in person, kind of get the real lay of the land. I'm also joined by Melissa Golden, if you could give us a little wave. All right. So Melissa is our director of operations. She supports everything kind of logistically related to all of our programs at VIA. So if you do end up applying to the program, if you set up an interview, you'll probably receive an email from her. So that's a little bit about me. And I'll ask Takai-san if you could introduce yourself as well.
Sure. Good morning. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Akiko Takai. I'm a faculty member of Rikyo University, and also I'm leading this project along with VIA colleagues since 2013. Well, VIA joined a little bit later, and I'm really, really hoping. I haven't actually been to Rikuzentakata for almost 2 years, and hopefully this year we were able to travel to Rikuzentakata. Great, thank you.
All right. So those are our facilitators for the program. But we want to know a little bit about all of you. So what brings you here today? So if you could write into the chat your self-introduction, so your preferred name and pronouns, academic institution that you're with, your year and major, or your area of interest if you don't have a major yet. And if you have a burning question, what question are you most hoping is answered by the end of this session? So it looks like we have a lot of really interesting people, a lot of diverse interests, diverse universities. We're really happy to see people who are interested in this program from a lot of different backgrounds. And I think that's one of the really great things about this program. It brings together people from a lot of different interests. I think there are a lot of ways to kind of approach the idea of sustainable community development. And kind of the people that we talk to on the program, our guest speakers, they also, come from energy or trade or kind of more like kind of grassroots community development. And the people who come onto the program as well, I think, have a really diverse range of interests. So this is great. who have seen this. Awesome. And we'll definitely address some of the questions that came up at the end of our session. So we want to kind of keep getting to know who's in the room. So Melissa's got a quick poll for us. All right, so we want to also tell you a little bit about VIA Programs, the organization that I work for. So we're a nonprofit. We were founded in 1963 at Stanford University, but we're actually our own independent organization. And our mission is to facilitate experiential learning programs to help build cross-cultural competence, problem solving, and leadership capacity. So those are kind of the three pillars of our curriculum that you'll find in all of our programs. And our vision is to create or support an interconnected ecosystem of social impact leaders and organizations. So in this program, what that looks like is, kind of convening a group of leaders like yourselves and connecting with leaders in Rikuzentakata, at Rikyo University in Japan, and also leaders outside of Japan, so other students from Japan, as well as other students from Hong Kong and Singapore. Since we've been around since 1963, we also have a really robust alumni network. So we have over 10,000 alumni representing over 25 different nationalities. Japan actually makes up 44% of our alumni network, or Japanese participants. And also from the US, we have about 28% of our alumni. And finally, we've collaborated with Rikyo University to facilitate this project since 2015. I'm going to pass it to Takai-san to tell us about Rikyo.
So Rikyo University is based in Tokyo, and it was founded in 1874. It's actually one of the older universities in Japan. And it is actually focusing on, sometimes it used to be called St. Paul in English, but I think they're actually, right now it's called Rikyo in English as well. And it has a pretty big internationally focused courses. Then this is also one of them. And it is mostly undergraduate and also has a teaching and research function as well. And the university actually focuses on working with people, and then it actually focuses on sort of like social services, not like a social work itself, but we started partnering with Rikuzentakata community or city prior to the large disaster in 2011. So that kind of gave us, that has been giving us a unique opportunity to work with them. It's not just the sort of recovery support. So this has been a great relationship that we have with the city. And then we also have a satellite campus within the city, which hopefully we were able to go visit. So it is actually more community-based work that we have been doing. So Rikuzentakata, which has a pretty long name, but it's actually Rikuzen is a kind of area that is the general area of that region. And then Takata is the name of the town that's within that. And it is a rural area in Iwate Prefecture. I'm not sure if a lot of people here, like you probably know about Japan, but not many of you are kind of like been to Iwate Prefecture. I myself haven't been there. I hadn't been there until I was there in 2011. And actually, it's coastal area in northern part of Japan. It's just called Tohoku region. The population here, as you can see, it's a tiny. It is called city, but it's actually very small. The population of 20 right now, it's like less than 20,000 people. And because of the geography, historically, that this city is actually mostly fishing or fishing related industries. It's not the huge fishing port like other areas that you probably heard of, but so it's actually fishing, fishery related processing kind of jobs are there, and then also like actually a pretty big agricultural area. The city actually has been quite unique. It actually has a as a sister city in California as well. And it's been looking at more of like sort of future looking and focusing on sustainable development goals, etc. And you probably read about like how the city has been communicating with outside communities as well. On March 11th, 2011, not sure, as I think Yuki mentioned earlier, many of you were probably too young to remember when this happened. Probably thinking it's like, this is when I was born. No, not really. But so basically, there was a huge earthquake that struck that coastal area. So it was actually the earthquake itself was to like before 3 o'clock, but the tsunami hit the area after 3 o'clock. There's some visuals I think you will be able to find. The tsunami was so high; it was actually like 13 meters, which is I don't know what it is in feet. So it may be actually a little bit difficult for you to actually. So 13 meters. So like 4 stories or 5-story buildings height, that kind of, you know, really huge wave hit the area. And also, it wasn't just the huge wave that came, but actually the water actually went into the many communities, and that kind of got it the community housing, etc. A lot of people. So it was actually, as you could see, it used to be a little over 20,000 people were living there, and almost 10% of the community actually were killed by the tsunami or the earthquake, and then also went missing because a lot of people unfortunately washed away with the tsunami. And more than that, it was actually 80% of the residential area, because residential areas are actually like in the coastal area and the agricultural area. A lot of that areas have been destroyed. And I think you will see that you hear a lot of about this pine tree thing. It used to be they used to be like a beach area, which they claim it's actually like sort of like Florida of Tohoku. It's like, where a lot of people from the region will come for vacationing, had gotten completely destroyed. And there's only one out of 70,000 pine trees that survive. Yeah.
Okay. And we also want to share a little bit about the goals of the Rikuzentakata project. So the first goal is to really understand social issues in rural Japan through the lens of disaster recovery. So there are a lot of kind of intersecting issues that go along with disaster recovery. Things like what is a rural economy like? What is the aging population like, and how are they kind of interacting with recovery? What is it like for people who want to move into this really rural area? What is it like for people who are trying to leave? Things like that. The second goal is to develop a global perspective on community implications of disaster recovery. So I think a big piece of this, of course, is having people like yourselves, international people with different perspectives, coming in and sharing what it is that they see going on in the community. But I think it's also really interesting when you speak with people from Rikuzentakata, they really see people outside of their community in kind of Japan as a whole, but even within the international community as really integral to their community's development. How are people outside of their community getting involved and making connections? The third goal is exploring how SDG 11, which is sustainable communities and cities, is applied in different contexts to develop more sustainable communities. So one thing that was really interesting in our last program was hearing from people in Singapore, the US, Hong Kong, other places in Japan, how are their own communities grappling with this issue of sustainability? What are they doing to make their communities more inclusive to people with disabilities or to foreigners, things like that. And the last piece is, of course, to build connections with peers from the US, Japan, Hong Kong, and Singapore, and really kind of beefing up your cross-cultural communication skills. So you might want to kind of get a sense of what are the past places that we visited. So these might be places that we visit again, but we might change it up a little bit depending on what is available. So the first place that we visited, or the first place I'll mention, is a place called Riku Cafe. As the name suggests, it's an actual restaurant, and it's really kind of focused on bringing together people from a lot of different places. So it's kind of a community hub, and the owners of the restaurant really want it to be a place of remembrance, one, but also a place where people can think about, okay, how do we live actively? How do we eat healthily? And so it's become a really great gathering place, especially for elderly people in the community. The second place is Marugoto Rikuzentakata. This is a community organization in Rikuzentakata. They're actually the ones that help to organize a lot of the visits in the city. And they're really kind of promoting community development and also tourism to the city. The third place is YY Cafe. So it's owned by this very cool gentleman right here. And this one as well is a cafe, but it's also this part of this larger complex, actually a building complex, that aims to be kind of a community hub. So they have kind of a co-working space, they have a game center, they're promoting different social entrepreneurs in the community. And then the fourth one is Yakisawa Shoten. So this is actually a 200-plus-year-old soy sauce company. It was completely devastated, but they were able to restart their production and make this amazing soy sauce once again. But this company is also trying to pivot and trying to bring in a lot of different artisans. So they want, Rikuzentakata to be a place where you go if you want really amazing chocolate or soy sauce ice cream or handmade wooden furniture, all these different, economies that aren't related to their historical economies of fishing or agriculture. All right, so now we actually want to pass it to Christina. So if you could spotlight Christina, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Christina went on a program a few years ago at this point. And now she's living in Japan as a jet. And I'll just turn it over to you to share what was memorable or anything else about the program.
Right, thank you. My name is Christina, and I'm here in Japan right now. And I have to say, the reason I'm in Japan right now is, it all started with VIA programs, and so I've participated in about 3 now, I think, but one of them was this Rikuzentakata program. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit, but before I do, I wanted to share some pictures just so you can have at least a slight idea of what my surroundings were like during that time. And then I'll explain more about my experience. So I'm going to share my screen. So this was my first time coming to Japan. This was about 3.5 years ago now, I think. So I took so many pictures, but I'm just going to keep this brief and show a few. So this was when we were in Tokyo. And then this is what Rikuzentakata looked like when I went there. It's been a while, so it probably looks different now, but this is what I saw when I was coming in with all of the other students on the bus. And it was my first time seeing a place like this, kind of underdeveloped. And during the program, we also stayed with some host families. And that was my first time also seeing a very traditional Japanese home. It was a really good experience there too. And we also stayed in this hotel for a while, and we made a lot of good memories here. Everything from the breakfast being really delicious to the conversations we had and the view that we got to see every morning. It was really beautiful. I feel like the hotel itself is a really good memory for me. And then these are the people that I was with during the program, who I became really close with. But anyway, just wanted to give an idea of what things looked like when I went. And before this information session, Yuki asked me what the most memorable experience was from this program. And to be honest, this program is really rare for me in the sense that every single day was so impactful that I feel like I can remember it very clearly, which is not the norm for me. I usually forget things pretty easily. So later I can go more into details during the Q&A session if you have specific questions, but I thought that there was this one specific moment that kind of represented how I feel about the whole experience in Rikuzentakata. And that was when my group during the program, we hosted this international exchange party. And so we invited, and it was at the end of the week, at the end of the program. So we invited all of the people that we met throughout the site visits and working on projects, and all the people whose stories we heard along the way. We invited them to this party, and a lot of them brought their families, and it included people of all ages. And there were even some immigrants living in Rikuzentakata, so they came along too. And during the party, I remember taking a step back and just paying attention to what was happening. And I remember seeing like everyone laughing and talking and smiling and hearing all of these different languages going around in the room, everything from Spanish to Korean to Japanese to English and even Tagalog. And I remember thinking that this experience was so unique because this whole past week we had spent it listening to these lived experiences and stories from people who suffered a really painful experience with this earthquake and tsunami. And we kind of bonded over those stories and experiences and conversations and learned more about each other in that way. And so during the party, it's like we had this underlying deep connection based on something that was really tragic and painful. But during the party, I could just hear all of these cultures like colliding and this really deep like human connection between all the people who were there. And I felt like despite the pain that especially brought together a lot of the residents of Rikuzentakata, it's like at least for that party in that moment, we were able to enjoy the positive things that came out of such a painful experience. And we could appreciate each other and the value we all had just in that moment right then and there, despite anything that had happened in the past. And I think that one moment that I stepped back and saw everything that was happening around me in that party kind of just reminded me how precious like human connection is and how strong these friendships and relationships can become through these different experiences, even if they're really difficult or painful to share with each other. And I think that is probably the most memorable experience for me from the program. And I think if you decide to participate in this program or honestly any of VIA's programs, I think you'll come out of it with this same appreciation for connecting with people who've lived lives that are very different from your own and who come from different places and speak different languages. You'll feel this underlying bond with people despite all of the differences you may have had based on like nationality or native language or things like that. So all in all, I recommend this program or any of VIA's programs. And yeah, like I said, at the Q&A session, if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask me anything specific. But I just wanted to talk about the kind of more emotional aspect of what stayed with me even after all of these years that have passed since the program. So yes, thank you for listening.
Christina, thank you so much for sharing that. I love you. But yeah, I think that's what stuck with me too, even though I've only been a part of the virtual version of the program. I think that, the tragedy of what happened in 2011 has never been forgotten by any of the residents there. But the kind of tone of our interactions with everyone is very hopeful and very joyous, and they are really just trying to make connections with people and teach about what has happened in the past and what they're hoping for the future. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So with that, I'm going to pass it to our alum, Jonah. So Melissa, if you could switch our spotlight over to him. So Jonah joined last year in our virtual program, so I definitely wanted to give him a chance to share his perspective, let us know anything at all, but if there was any story that was very memorable for you, let you take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning or good day, everybody. Really nice to be here. Last year, when I joined the project, I had just recently graduated from UC Santa Cruz, where I studied Asian history with an emphasis on Japan and Japanese linguistic studies. But when I graduated, I knew that I wanted to do something different than what I had been doing for the past few years. Academia was a huge part of my life, but like many people in this room, even based on that poll, I had experienced, a major natural disaster in 2020. Santa Cruz was subject to the CZU lightning storm fire, which was just a few miles away from, where I'm currently sitting right now. It really, when you go through something like that, it makes you feel isolated. It makes you feel helpless. I mean, it makes you feel depressed in all honesty. And, when I graduated, I knew that I wanted to be more actionable in the sorts of things that I was dedicating my time to. I had a passion for sustainability. I had worked in sustainability on campus before. But the idea of transitioning from a history degree to a career in sustainability was somewhat of a difficult concept for me to grasp. So when I was presented with the opportunity to study via the Rikuzentakata Project, I really jumped at the opportunity because it seemed like a really good gateway to transition my skills and interests in international studies and Japanese language into a potential career in sustainability. And, of course, while the content of the course was really interesting and meaningful, I'd say the most memorable thing that I took away from my experience in the Rikuzentakata project was finding others who had the same passion that was derived under similar circumstances. I think it's really, really easy to see our own experiences as isolated and to be discouraged by that. But when you sit down and you make connections with people and you talk to people about their experiences with similar things like natural disasters, like housing crises, etc., it makes it an easier task to sort of grapple with this greater battle and to take on tasks in your everyday to make your community more sustainable, more welcoming. In any case, I don't have much of an anecdote or a story that I think is particularly memorable from the Rikuzentakata project. I remember it all very well. It was a really meaningful experience. But what I will say is that my experience was completely virtual, and I made some lasting connections during my time. I still talk to people from the program. So if I could do that and it was all virtual, it was all via Zoom, I'm very confident that you all in person, knock on wood, will be able to do the same and more. I'm really, really stoked for all of you. And I think that you should definitely join and apply.
Jonah, thank you so much for sharing your experience. And yeah, I was really impressed too. I think I've run a lot of virtual programs now at this point, and I think that the level to which people are engaged and learn from the program, it really derives from the participants themselves to kind of get what you put in. And so I think that it was just a really fabulous group of people. So we're really hoping to have another really great group again this year. And if you have questions for Jonah, he's going to stick around. So if you have any specific questions for him later on, you can definitely ask him during Q&A. Okay, so we're going to kind of go into the logistical pieces. So I'm going to pass it over to Melissa, and I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, so again, hoping that everything goes according to plan. Our ideal schedule is that everyone would arrive in Tokyo by August 23rd. There was a question about travel, maybe before or after the program. That is an option. VIA will be booking the flights for everyone, so we would just kind of talk with you if you wanted to arrive a little bit early or leave a little bit later. But everyone needs to be in Tokyo ready for the program by August 23rd. And then the orientation will happen at Rikkyo University's Ikebukuro campus on the 24th. And then everyone will depart for Rikuzentakata on the 25th. The travel usually involves taking the Shinkansen bullet train to a nearby town and then taking a bus to get to Rikuzentakata itself. And everyone will spend a few days there going on a city tour and visiting some of these locations that we mentioned, as well as working on team projects. And the content of the projects or the focus of the projects varies every year a little bit. It's kind of, we try to make sure that it's responsive to the needs of the community and the current context there. And then the Rikuzentakata portion usually culminates with some kind of presentation activity to the community, to the mayor and other folks in town, and some sort of celebration event. And then everyone will come back to Tokyo for a wrap up. And that includes presenting some of the project outcomes or results to the Rikyo faculty and staff, and then a program evaluation and kind of conclusion. And again, if people want to stay in Japan and travel at that point, of course, assuming everything is fine in terms of kind of pandemic conditions, that would be a possibility. Or you would then come back on the 31st. And just for those who haven't traveled in that direction before, it's always helpful to remember that you leave here and leave from the West Coast of the US or leave from the US, arrive the next day when you get to Japan because you're crossing the international date line. And then you get to time travel backwards when you come back to the US and arrive on the day that you departed from Japan to the US. So what we're looking for in terms of fit for participants for this program, and I will say that there are 5 slots available for US students who will also be joined by students from Rikyo University, the University of Hong Kong, and National University of Singapore. And for those students, we do expect that they'll be studying at a US university. I think I saw a question about a US citizen who is studying at a university outside the US. That would also be okay. Spring 2022 graduates and fall incoming freshmen are also eligible, provided that you are 18 or older by August 1st of this year. Full COVID vaccination at the time of departure will be required, including booster shots as available at that time. So if for some reason we have another booster that comes up in the interim, that would also be required. You must be able to travel to Japan, meaning you have a passport and that traveling there wouldn't jeopardize your enrollment status in the US, for example, if you aren't a US citizen. And then we just expect that everyone is committed to participating fully in all activities. That includes pre-departure and during the program as well, of course. And then as far as interest and experience, like Yuki mentioned at the beginning, it's really having an interest and a willingness to learn about these things. We don't expect everyone to have hands-on experience with all of these topics, but definitely an interest in sustainable development, an interest in rural communities specifically, interest in disaster recovery, and then interest in Japan, even if that's not something that you're focusing on necessarily. Just being open and curious is kind of what we're looking for. And then, of course, what's not required, we don't expect anyone to have to speak Japanese. If you do, great, but the program will be facilitated bilingually. The students who are coming from Hong Kong and Singapore will be participating in the program using English primarily. And then previous Japan-related experience, again, is not required. And then US citizenship as well is not required as long as you're able to travel to Japan. Okay, as far as our application and enrollment timeline goes, Applications are due March 27th. The link to the application is on our website. And then applicants will have an interview with Yuki that'll be held for about 30 minutes on Zoom. We intend to notify everyone of the results by the beginning of April and ask that those who are accepted confirm their intent to participate by April 8th. The following week, we'll be sending out invoices. Those are due 30 days from the date they're received. And then May through July, there will be pre-departure preparation. There will be some, readings and other materials to review, and then an online orientation with Rikyo at the beginning of August, and that'll be held 2 hours in the evening on August 1st, US time. And for participation costs, the program fee is $180 US. That's not a typo. We're not missing a zero there. Thankfully, this time around, we are able to work with Rikuzentakata University to fund the majority of the cost for this program. And so that includes round-trip international airfare, international travel insurance, the transportation to and from Rikuzentakata, and local transportation in the area. There's usually a bus that takes everyone around, just because local transportation is a little bit less intense than it is in Tokyo. So everyone gets shuttled around. There's a travel allowance for while you're in Tokyo, and lodging will be covered. Breakfast and dinners are provided at the hotel where everyone stays in Rikuzentakata, and then we provide a per diem for other meals during the program. And there will be 24-hour on-site support. And then, of course, the participants are responsible for their own personal travel expenses. That means getting from where you are in the US to your airport, and any kind of out-of-pocket medical expenses. This could include COVID tests or any costs of quarantining if that becomes necessary. And of course, your personal expenses, souvenirs and things like that as well. So we do have a contingency plan if the pandemic situation worsens, and that would mainly be returning to the virtual format. So if the program is converted to the virtual format and US participants are still able to join, we will return 50% of the program fee. So everyone would get that 50% refund. And then if the program is canceled entirely, it would be a full refund. But we are hoping, of course, that worst case scenario, we would still be able to offer the virtual program, which we've run twice now. So it is pretty well developed, and you still get to meet a lot of these wonderful people who are at these different community centers and cafes and things like that during the program.